Hi, I'm Greg Lindsay. I'm a senior fellow of the NewCities Foundation and the urbanist in residence at UrbanX, which is BMW Mini's urban tech accelerator. And I'm here at VIP Americas to talk about the city of tomorrow. And I guess as a starting place about the city of tomorrow is that I think the most successful cities will have a lot of the same attributes that have always made cities great, particularly their ability to bring large amounts of people together in space and time, to share information, to enjoy urban amenities, to walk. So part of my talk today is going to reflect on the notion that I think, as a researcher, not an investor, that the classic sort of suburban post-war model, right, of drivable suburbia with malls and offices, these sort of single-use typologies, is, if not coming to an end, then it's gotten a lot more complicated. And we've seen this, right, with the rise of premiums for walkable real estate. Christopher Leinberger's work in particular about walkable urban places. The top two walkable cities in America are New York and Washington, D.C., which of course won the Amazon HQ2 competition. So we're still seeing, particularly tech companies, are paying premiums to be in the cities that have the most sort of face-to-face amenities that are out there. And so part of my hypothesis is that going forward, the changes that we're seeing in technology and mobility and how we live and work and play are going to sort of urbanize the suburbs and start to create new forms of mixed use. So today I'm talking a bit about, for example, like what if, the mobility device of the future is not the car, but it's the scooter, or it's what comes after the scooter. I'm looking at how, apps, for example, like Uber and Lyft are evolving beyond ride hailing into creating their own services with the bikes and scooters, the ability to find multiple modes and map it to public transportation to allow you to choose how you want to get around cities. And once you do that, of course, your entire perception of how you see the city changes, and then of course changes land values accordingly. So looking at things like what they call mobility as a service and thinking about how autonomous vehicles or autonomous infrastructure, stores that can come to you, or autonomous delivery will again change a lot of the business models underpinning retailing. I'm also going to talk a bit, of course, about the future of work. I've talked a lot already with people here about WeWork. Is WeWork for real? And I would argue that, we can debate the merits of the company all day, but what it says about sort of changing notions of work, the fact that, that 40% of the American workforce, the knowledge workforce, is already sort of independent, contingent laborers, freelancers everywhere. We're seeing the notion of like the traditional company is breaking down into its parts and then building itself back up. And structures like WeWork are important not just because they are places where people do work, but they're becoming these ways of organizing work as well. And so this rise of co-working, I think, is really important in ways we haven't yet explored. And that, of course, will change conventional offices. I'm talking today a bit about the notion of the smart city, looking at Songdo, South Korea, which is, one of the archetypal ones from 10 years ago, built on a mud flat in the Yellow Sea. And it hasn't quite worked out as intended because I think it was too top down. There wasn't enough ability for the residents to actually make the city themselves. And what's interesting to me is something like Sidewalk Toronto, which Sidewalk Labs is developing. They have lots of problems with their data policies, but they're exploring this notion of how do we activate every single piece of the city? What if we start with public space and figure out new ways to use it? So the fact that they're trying to create pavement, for example, that a robot can flip over so you can turn a road into a play space during the day is a really interesting idea. And how do we, again, activate more of the sort of streetscape? And that leads me to, I guess, sort of the final piece of what I'm talking about today, which is the notion of, what they called tactical urbanism. This idea that, that there is a new scale of activity between, planning a big development, building it, and then bringing it onto the market. And that's the notion of how do we redevelop all the stuff we built using these new lightweight interventions that can be as simple as painting your own bike lanes in your community. We've seen lots of corporate developers. I'm working with Howard Hughes, for example, and some others who are using these tactics to take dead malls and convert them into new urban centers. Or even Walmart is trying to imagine, how to create new town centers outside their stores using the sort of light touch centers. So I think the real smart city of tomorrow is one that's going to actually have a much lighter touch technology layer that's going to help us understand how do we reactivate these spaces, how do we make them more vibrant. So it's not going to be about having this huge smart city. It's going to be about a bench that's watching how many people are using a park and can suggest how we can sort of change spaces to basically make it more amenable for people. It's not going to be about having a smart doctor come to your home. It's going to be about, in China, for example, they're building essentially autonomous AI health clinics everywhere. The smart city is going to trickle out in ways we haven't thought about. So I hope to give a lot of food for thought for people here to basically debate and think about how all of these sort of classical types are going from mixed use to mixed up use as we combine them in new ways. Thank you so much.